Some stories don't begin with once upon a time. They begin with a train ticket bought in anger, a letter written in haste, and a woman stepping off a stagecoach into a world she never chose. This is a tale for those who have learned that life's detours often lead somewhere better than planned. For every heart told it wasn't wanted, for every soul sent away as punishment. This story reminds us that what others discard, love treasures. I wrote this for the quiet ones among us, for those who sit on porches at twilight, remembering. For those who understand that the greatest adventures aren't always loud. Sometimes they're as soft as a hand reaching across the space between two rocking chairs. So settle in. Pour yourself some coffee. Let's go back to the summer of 1882 to Copper Creek, where a woman arrived carrying everything she owned in one bag and found everything she needed in a man who didn't know how to say hello. The heat hit her first. Elena Marlowe gripped the iron railing and stepped down from the stage, her boots meeting the warped wooden planks of Copper Creek's depot. Late June in Wyoming territory. The air pressed against her skin like damp wool, thick with dust and the smell of horses. She set down her carpetbag. Brass clasps glinted in the afternoon sun. Her eyes moved across the platform, a woman in blue calico clutching a toddler, an old man with a newspaper, two cowboys sharing a cigarette near the water trough. None of them looked at her. She touched the folded paper in her pocket. The proxy marriage certificate, legal and binding, signed by a man she'd never met. Caleb Dawson. Her husband. The station master approached. Wiry fellow, sun-darkened, tobacco-stained mustache. You'd be the Dawson bride. Not a question. He jerked his chin toward the far end of the platform. That's him. Elena turned. A man stood apart from the others, tall, lean, hat pulled low enough to shadow his eyes, arms crossed over his chest. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just watched. She picked up her bag and walked. 20 feet, 15, 10, up close. She could see the lines around his eyes, sun lines, squint lines, the kind from years of watching horizons. His jaw was set hard, like he was chewing on words he couldn't swallow. Mr. Dawson, ma'am? One syllable. She waited. Nothing more came. I'm Elena. He nodded, took her carpetbag before she could protest, turned and started toward a buckboard wagon hitched near the street. She followed. The silence stretched between them like rope pulled taut. Elena counted her steps, listening to the creak of his boots, the jingle of harness as the horses shifted, a brown mare and a gray. Both tired, both well cared for. He set her bag in the wagon bed, offered his hand to help her up. Palm rough, calloused, warm from the sun. The touch lasted 2 seconds. She settled onto the horsehair seat. He climbed up beside her, clicked his tongue at the horses. They moved. The town fell away general store, church with a crooked steeple, saloon with doors propped open against the heat, then nothing but road and sky and yellow-brown prairie grass bending in a wind Elena couldn't feel. A mile past, 2, they came to a creek bed, dry, just rocks and cracked mud where water should have been. Caleb's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped near his ear. Elena filed that away. Things that mattered. House ain't much. His voice was low, rough, like he didn't use it often. I've had less. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise. Maybe. Gone before she could name it. They rode on. The ranch appeared as the sun began its descent, a small house. A barn weathered silver. A corral with horses standing nose to tail in what little shade the fence posts offered. It wasn't much. He'd been honest about that. But the porch was swept clean. The windows had curtains faded calico. But curtains? Someone had planted flowers along the foundation. Brown now, beaten down by drought. Caleb pulled the wagon to a stop. I'll get your bag. He was down before she could respond. Elena climbed down on her own. Boots raising small puffs of dust, she stood looking at the house. Her house, now, legally, on the porch, a single rocking chair sat near the door. Worn smooth by use. Just one. Caleb came up beside her, carpetbag in hand. He followed her gaze to the chair, and something crossed his face, a shadow. A memory. Something private. This way. The inside was sparse. Clean, but sparse. A kitchen with a cast-iron stove. A table with 2 chairs. A window overlooking empty prairie. Caleb set her bag by the bedroom door. You can sleep in here. I'll take the barn. The barn. Till you're settled. He said it like it was obvious. They were strangers. Names on paper. There's a well out back. Water's still good. A pause. For now. He moved toward the door. Hand on the frame. Didn't turn around. Supper's at 6. If you're hungry. Then he was gone. Boots fading into gravel as he walked toward the barn. Elena stood in the kitchen alone. 1 chair on the porch, 1 cup by the wash basin, a house built for solitude. She reached into her pocket. Not the certificate, the other letter. Her brother's handwriting. Sharp and slanted. You embarrassed this family. You chose strangers over blood. Consider this your consequence. Consequence. She was someone's punishment. Elena placed the letter on the table. Then she found matches, found kindling, and lit the stove. By sundown. Coffee filled the kitchen with warmth. His boots hit the porch at 6 exactly. He stopped in the doorway when he saw the steam rising from the pot. His hands, she noticed, were freshly washed. Didn't expect. He stopped. You didn't have to. I know. She poured 2 cups. Set one near the chair closest to the door. Sit down. Caleb. First time using his name. He sat. She sat across from him. Hands wrapped around her cup, outside. Light faded to purple and gray. A coyote called in the distance. Neither spoke. Then Caleb reached for his cup, and Elena noticed his hands weren't quite steady. So, she thought, you're as lost as I am. Somehow, that made everything less frightening. If this story has touched something in you, a memory, a hope, a quiet place you haven't visited in a while, I'd love to know where you're reading from tonight, as my grandmother used to say. The best stories are the ones we share. Drop a comment and tell me your corner of the world. Elena woke to the smell of nothing. No coffee, no bacon, just the faint mustiness of sheets that hadn't held a body in too long. Gray light pressed through the calico curtains. Early, before dawn. Maybe. She lay still, listening, wind against the window frame, the distant complaint of a rooster. Silence from the rest of the house. She pushed back the quilt and set her feet on the cold wooden floor. The kitchen was empty. Coffee pot cold on the stove. A single tin cup sat unwashed in the basin his. From last night? She touched the rim, dry. He'd been gone for hours. Elena moved through the room slowly, learning its bones. The pantry held almost nothing, a sack of flour half empty. A tin of coffee grounds scraped nearly bare. Salt. A jar of preserved beans. The shelves above the stove were dust-free, but barren. She opened the drawer beside the washstand. A photograph lay face down against the wood. Small, framed in simple pine. Her fingers hovered over it. Not her place. She closed the drawer. The fire caught on the second match. Elena fed it kindling, then larger pieces, working until heat began to push back against the morning chill. She found a mixing bowl, measured flour by feel, added water from the pitcher, biscuits, simple, something to fill the silence. Her hands worked the dough, pressing and folding, pressing and folding. The rhythm steadied her. Outside. The light shifted from gray to gold, and she heard hoofbeats coming in from the east pasture. She didn't go to the window. The door opened 20 minutes later. Caleb stood in the frame, dust coating his boots, sweat darkening the band of his hat. He stopped when the smell hit him. His nostrils flared. Elena kept her back to him, sliding the biscuits from the pan onto a cracked plate. "Coffee's hot," she said. He didn't answer. But she heard him cross to the basin, heard water splashing, heard the rough scrape of his hands against a towel. When she finally turned, he was sitting at the table, staring at the plate like he'd forgotten what food looked like. She set it in front of him, poured coffee into his cup. He reached for a biscuit, hesitated, took a second one instead. That evening, she found the jar of wildflowers on the kitchen table. Black-eyed Susans. Still damp at the stems, no note, no explanation. Elena stared at them for a long time, her chest tight with something she couldn't name. Where did a man like that find flowers in a drought? The letter had lived in her pocket for 6 weeks. Elena pulled it out now, sitting on the edge of the bed in the gray light of morning. Day 5. The paper was soft from handling, creased where she'd folded and unfolded it dozens of times on the journey west. Her brother's handwriting cut across the page in sharp, slanted strokes. You embarrassed this family. She knew the words by heart, didn't need to read them anymore. You chose strangers over blood. The widow's name was Margaret Hensley, 53 years old, 4 children, a farm mortgaged to a banker who happened to be Elena's cousin's business partner. When the banker tried to foreclose using forged documents, Elena found the proof. She stood up in front of the county clerk and showed everyone exactly what kind of man Harold Ashworth really was. Margaret kept her farm. Her children kept their home. Elena's family never forgave her. Consider this your consequence. She traced the words with her fingertip. The ink had faded slightly where her thumb had rubbed against it during the long train ride. Consequence. She was someone's punishment, a problem to be disposed of. Shipped west to a stranger who'd paid $30 for a wife through a matrimonial agency. Her brother hadn't even told her until the papers were signed. Elena stood, walked to the kitchen. The stove was already warm. She'd learned to wake before dawn. to have coffee ready when Caleb came in from his early rounds. She opened the iron door. The flames licked upward, orange and hungry. She held the letter over the opening. Heat pressed against her knuckles. One breath, two. She let go. The paper caught instantly, edges curling brown, then black. Her brother's words twisted and writhed as fire consumed them. Embarrassed, strangers, consequence, gone, all of it, ash floating upward into the flue. The door behind her opened. Elena spun around. Caleb stood on the threshold, a bucket of well water in his hand. His eyes moved from her face to the stove, to the last fragment of paper dissolving into ember. He didn't ask. She didn't explain. He set the bucket by the basin, nodded once, and walked back out into the morning light. That evening, she found something on the kitchen table. A jar. Small, glass, the kind used for preserving. Inside, a handful of wildflowers, black-eyed Susans, their yellow petals bright against the fading daylight. The stems were still damp, freshly cut. Elena stared at them. She hadn't heard him come in, hadn't heard him leave. But sometime between her burning the letter and now, he'd gone out, found these flowers in the middle of a drought, and placed them here without a word. She touched one petal, soft, alive. Her throat tightened. The next morning, she walked to the dry creek bed. The sun was already brutal, pressing down on her shoulders through the thin cotton of her dress. She'd borrowed one of Caleb's old hats. He'd left it on the porch. Hadn't said anything when she took it. The creek was a scar in the earth. Rocks bleached white by sun. Mud cracked into patterns like broken pottery. She followed it east, away from the house, until she spotted a figure moving among the scrub brush. An old woman, white hair pinned beneath a faded sunbonnet. A basket hooked over one arm. She was bent low, plucking something from the ground. Elena approached slowly. The woman looked up. Her face was a map of wrinkles, deep-set eyes sharp as flint. "You'd be the new bride. Word travels fast. Only thing that does. Out here." The woman straightened, pressing one hand to her lower back. "Martha Perkins. I live 3 miles north. What's left of it. Elena Dawson." Martha's eyebrows rose slightly at the surname. "Dawson. So you're his. Then..." "Legally..." A sound came from Martha's throat. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a cough. "Caleb's a good man. Quiet as a fence post. But good. He seems... careful." "Careful," Martha snorted. "That's one word." She shifted her basket, revealing bundles of dried herbs, roots with dirt still clinging to them. "You know about Silas Garrett?" Elena shook her head. "Big rancher, owns most of the valley south of here, been buying up water rights for 2 years now. Every creek and spring he can get his hands on." Martha's voice hardened. "Your husband's the last holdout. Only one who won't sell. That's why the creek is dry. Garrett dammed it upstream. Legal, supposedly. But legal and right ain't always the same thing." Elena looked back toward the ranch, barely visible on the horizon. The brown fields, the wilting garden, the single rocking chair on the porch. How many other families are affected? 15, maybe more. Hendricks to the east. Their first baby coming any month now. Tom Brennan's been here longer than the territory itself. All of them hurting. Martha studied Elena's face. Why do you ask? Just curious. But her mind was already working. 15 families, one man blocking them all, and somewhere in a county clerk's office. There would be records, water rights, dates, legal precedents. Martha seemed to read something in her expression. You've got sand. I'll give you that. Most women who come out here on those bride trains, they take one look at the empty and they crumble. I'm not most women. No. Martha's eyes narrowed. Appraising. I don't suppose you are. She reached into her basket and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Chamomile. For tea, helps with sleep. She pressed it into Elena's hands. You'll need it. Garrett doesn't give up easy. Elena took the bundle. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Martha turned to go, then paused. That husband of yours, his father, built that ranch with his bare hands. Caleb would die before he let it go. She looked back over her shoulder. Question is, what are you willing to do? Elena watched her walk away. The question hanging in the hot, still air. What am I willing to do? She thought of the letter she'd burned, the family that had thrown her away, the widow she'd saved, and the price she'd paid for it. Then she thought of the wildflowers on the kitchen table. Black-eyed Susans, bright and alive in a jar of water, left by a man who didn't know how to say what he meant. She started walking back toward the ranch. By the time she reached the porch, she knew exactly what she was going to do. But first, she needed to find out everything there was to know about Silas Garrett's water rights. And she needed Caleb to trust her enough to let her try. Caleb came back from the north pasture covered in dust. Elena heard the horse. Before she saw him, hooves hitting the hard-packed earth in an uneven rhythm. Too fast for a casual return. She set down the mending and walked to the window. He dismounted before the mare fully stopped. His shoulders were rigid beneath his sweat-darkened shirt. He didn't look at the house. Just stood there, one hand on the saddle horn, staring at nothing. Something was wrong. Elena stepped onto the porch. The afternoon heat pressed against her face, thick and unmoving. Caleb. He didn't answer. His hand moved from the saddle to his hat. Pulled it off. Ran fingers through damp hair. Then he walked past her into the house without a word. She followed. He was standing at the wash basin, pouring water over his hands, scrubbing at them like he was trying to remove something that wouldn't come off. His movements were sharp, controlled. Too controlled. What happened? Creeks blocked. His voice came out flat. Upstream! Someone moved rocks. Built up the bank. Water's going nowhere now. Elena watched his hands tremble as he reached for the towel. Garrett? Who else? He threw the towel onto the counter. It missed, slid to the floor. He didn't pick it up. Checked the irrigation channel this morning. Dry as bone. Went to see why. You saw it yourself. Saw enough. He turned to face her. His eyes were hard, but underneath something else. Something raw. Man's got no shame. Doesn't even try to hide it anymore. Elena bent down, picked up the towel, hung it on the hook by the basin. What about the other ranchers, the Hendricks, the Brennans? Same boat. Worse. Maybe. Caleb's jaw worked. Tom Brennan's got no one to help him. Jacob Hendricks is trying to dig a new well, but the water table's dropped so low. He stopped, pressed his palms flat against the table, leaning forward, head bowed, Elena had never seen him like this. In 8 days of living under the same roof, she'd seen him tired, seen him quiet, seen him awkward. Never this. "We should talk to them," she said. "All of them. Together." His head came up. What? The other families. If Garrett's doing this to everyone, then everyone needs to stand together. One voice is easy to ignore. 15 voices. "I handle my own troubles. This isn't just your trouble." She stepped closer, keeping her voice steady. "You think this is about you? Garrett's counting on that. He picks you off one by one. That's how men like him win." Caleb straightened. His eyes narrowed. "You don't know anything about men like him." "I know plenty." The words came out sharper than she intended. She pulled back, softened her tone. "I know what happens when good people stay quiet because they think fighting won't make a difference. I've seen it." Silence stretched between them. Caleb studied her face like he was trying to read something written in a language he didn't speak. "Where'd you learn to talk like that?" Elena hesitated. The old instinct hide, deflect, change the subject rose up, and she pushed it down. "My father was a lawyer, country practice, nothing fancy. But he had books, hundreds of them, case law, property disputes, water rights. I read everything I could get my hands on." She met his eyes. "And 3 years ago, I used what I learned to stop a crooked banker from stealing a widow's farm." Caleb's expression shifted. Not softer. Exactly. More open. "What happened? The widow kept her land. Her children kept their home." Elena's throat tightened. "And my family sent me here as punishment for embarrassing them." The words hung in the air between them. Caleb didn't look away, didn't flinch. Just stood there, absorbing it, turning it over like a man examining a tool he'd never seen before. "So, that's why." "That's why." Another silence. This one different, less distance in it. Then Caleb turned away, walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. "My pa built this place." His voice was low, rough. "Broke 2 fingers setting the foundation stones. Never complained. Not once." He didn't turn around. "I promised him I'd hold on to it, no matter what." Elena waited. "Can't lose it." The words came out cracked. "I just can't." She crossed the room, stood behind him, close enough to see the tension in his shoulders, the white-knuckle grip on the door frame. "Then don't push me away." He turned. Their faces were inches apart. She could smell dust and sweat and something underneath soap. Maybe from this morning's wash. His eyes searched hers. "You really think you can help?" "I think we can try." They sat on the porch as darkness fell. 2 tin cups on the railing. Steam rising into the cooling air. The moon was coming up over the eastern ridge, fat and yellow. Caleb spoke first. "Tomorrow, we can ride out to the Hendricks place. Start there." Elena nodded. "And the county clerk's office. I need to see the original water rights documents." "That's a full day's ride." "I know." He turned his cup in his hands. "You'd do that. Spend a whole day in a wagon, digging through dusty records, for land that ain't even yours." Elena looked out at the dark prairie, the stars beginning to prick through the velvet sky. "It's mine now." She felt him go still beside her. When she finally looked over, he was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Something had shifted in his face. The wall was still there, but a door had appeared in it. A door he might actually open. All right, he said quietly. We'll try it your way. Elena wrapped her hands around her cup, letting the warmth seep into her palms. For the first time since she'd stepped off that stagecoach, she felt something that might have been hope, but underneath it, a question nagged at her. Martha had said Garrett didn't give up easy. A man like that, wealthy, connected, used to getting what he wanted, wouldn't just sit back and let a handful of struggling ranchers organize against him. What would he do when he found out, and how far was he willing to go to stop them? The Hendricks farm sat in a shallow valley east of Copper Creek. The house small and weathered, a vegetable garden wilting in the sun beside it. Elena climbed down from the buckboard before Caleb could offer his hand. Her legs were stiff from the ride, her dress clinging to her back with sweat. 3 hours in the July heat, dust coating her throat. And still she felt something close to excitement humming beneath her ribs. A woman appeared in the doorway, young 20 at most, with a round belly straining against her faded calico dress. 6 months along, maybe 7. Her face was pale despite the heat, eyes hollowed with exhaustion that went deeper than tired. Mrs. Hendricks, Sarah. The woman's voice was thin. You're the Dawson bride. Martha told me you might come. Elena. She stepped forward, kept her movements slow. This is my husband. Caleb. Caleb nodded from beside the wagon, but didn't approach. Smart. A strange man on the property would only add tension. Sarah's eyes moved between them. Jacob's in the Northfield, trying to dig a new well. A pause. 3rd one this month. Any luck? You know the answer to that. Elena did. Sarah stepped back from the doorway, a silent invitation. The interior was dim and close, barely cooler than outside. A single window let in a rectangle of harsh light. The furniture was sparse, a table, 3 chairs, a cradle in the corner that looked newly built. Sarah lowered herself into a chair, one hand pressed to her lower back. I can't offer you much. Coffee's been out for 2 weeks. Water's what we've got. Water's fine. Sarah poured from a clay pitcher, her hands unsteady. Elena noticed the crack running down the side, the careful way she tilted it to avoid spilling. Martha said you wanted to talk about Garrett. I want to talk about fighting him. Sarah's cup stopped halfway to her lips. Fighting? Legally. Together. Elena leaned forward. How many families in this valley are affected by what he's doing? 15? Maybe more. Sarah set the cup down. But talking about fighting and actually doing it, those are different things. Mrs. Dawson. Elena. Sarah's mouth tightened. Garrett's got money. He's got lawyers. He's got men who do what he says and don't ask questions. What if we got empty wells and dying cattle? You've got numbers. You've got the truth. Elena kept her voice steady. And you've got rights, legal rights, that existed before Silas Garrett ever set foot in this territory. Sarah stared at her. You sound like you know what you're talking about. I do. A long pause. Outside. The sound of hooves, Jacob returning from the fields. Probably. Sarah's eyes flickered toward the window, then back to Elena. Even if we wanted to fight, how none of us can afford lawyers. None of us can take time away from the land, not with things this bad. You wouldn't need lawyers, not if we had the right documents. Elena pulled the conversation forward. Careful. Precise. I need to see the original water rights records at the county clerk's office. If what I suspect is true, Garrett's claims might not hold up under territorial law. And if you're wrong, then we're no worse off than we are now. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Her hand moved to her belly. Rested there. Jacob won't like it, she said finally. He's proud, wants to handle things himself. So is Caleb. Elena glanced toward the door, where her husband's silhouette was visible through the gap. But sometimes pride has to bend. Sarah followed her gaze. Something shifted in her expression, a crack in the exhaustion. Something almost like hope trying to push through. I'll talk to him. Elena reached across the table, took Sarah's hand. The younger woman's fingers were rough, calloused, cold despite the heat. That's all I'm asking. The general store in Copper Creek smelled of tobacco and pickle brine. Elena stood near the counter, examining a bolt of fabric she had no intention of buying, while Caleb waited outside with the wagon. They'd stopped on the way back from the Hendricks place, her idea. Supplies were low. And besides, she wanted to see the town, learn its rhythms, understand who held power here and who didn't. The bell over the door chimed. She didn't turn around, but her spine straightened. The footsteps behind her were too deliberate, too measured. Not a farmer coming in for nails, not a housewife checking prices. Mrs. Dawson, I presume. The voice was smooth, cultured. Wrong for a place like this. Elena turned. The man standing 3 feet away was perhaps 50. Silver threading through dark hair that was too well groomed for ranch country. His suit was wool-fine wool. Despite the heat, and a gold watch chain glinted at his vest. His smile showed too many teeth. Mr. Garrett? And his eyebrows rose slightly. You know my name. Word travels fast out here. Indeed it does. He moved closer, not quite crowding her, but making his presence felt. I've been meaning to pay a call on your husband, man to man. Business matters to discuss. What kind of business? The kind that might benefit him greatly. Garrett's smile didn't waver. This drought, it's hard on everyone. I'm in a position to help. A generous offer for his land, enough to start fresh somewhere with better prospects. Elena met his gaze without flinching. That's thoughtful of you. Practical, really. The water situation isn't going to improve. A smart man would recognize that and act accordingly. My husband isn't selling. The words came out flat, final. She watched Garrett's expression flicker. Loss of composure, maybe, or irritation. Quickly smoothed over. Perhaps I should speak with him directly. You just did. Silence. The storekeeper had frozen behind the counter, pretending to arrange tins of beans. The only sound was the buzz of a fly against the window glass. Garrett studied her for a long moment. The smile was gone now. What remained was something harder, colder. You're new here, Mrs. Dawson. You don't understand how things work. I understand fine. Do you? He leaned in, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive, out of place. This valley runs on water. I control the water. That's not going to change because a mail-order bride decides to make trouble. Elena's heart was pounding, but she kept her face still. Are you threatening me? Mr. Garrett, I'm explaining reality. He straightened, adjusted his cuffs. Ask around. Ask anyone. Fighting me is a waste of time and energy, both of which your husband can't afford to lose. He tipped his hat, turned, and walked out the door. Elena stood motionless, listening to his footsteps fade, the creak of a carriage, the snap of reins, when she finally stepped outside. Caleb was standing by the wagon, his eyes fixed on Garrett's retreating carriage. His jaw was tight. What did he want? To buy you out? Elena climbed up onto the seat. I told him no. Caleb didn't move for a moment. Then he climbed up beside her, took the reins. You called me your husband. Elena blinked. Of all the things she'd expected him to say. That wasn't it. Yes, in the store. When I was talking to him. First time you've said it. Heat crept up her neck, and it had nothing to do with the sun. It was strategic. I wanted him to know, I know what you wanted. Caleb clicked his tongue, and the horses started forward. He didn't look at her. Just wasn't expecting it. They rode in silence for half a mile. Then, quietly, thank you. Elena turned to look at him. His profile was unreadable, eyes fixed on the road ahead. But something in the set of his shoulders had changed. Looser, maybe less alone. You're welcome, she said. The word husband echoed in her mind all the way home. She'd meant it strategically. She had. So why did it feel like something else entirely? The county clerk's office smelled of dust and old paper. Elena stood at the counter, sweat trickling down her spine, waiting while a thin man with ink-stained fingers shuffled through a stack of ledgers. The ride from Copper Creek had taken 4 hours. Her back ached. Her throat was dry. None of it mattered. Water rights records, she said again. Territorial surveys from 1865. The clerk peered at her over wire-rimmed spectacles. His face was narrow, pinched, the kind that had learned to be careful around people with money. Those are old files, ma'am. Stored in the back. Takes time to locate. I can wait. He hesitated. His eyes flickered toward Caleb, who stood near the door with his arms crossed, hat pulled low. Then back to Elena. Might I ask what this is regarding? Property research. My husband's ranch. Dawson. That's right? Something shifted in the clerk's expression, a tightening around his mouth, a guardedness that hadn't been there before. Those records, they're not often requested. I'm requesting them now. Another hesitation. The clerk glanced toward a door at the back of the room, then at the window facing the street. Elena followed his gaze. Nothing out there but the usual traffic, a wagon rolling past. 2 men talking outside the land office. But the clerk was nervous. That much was clear. I'll see what I can find. He disappeared through the back door. Elena waited. The clock on the wall ticked. 5 minutes. 10. Caleb shifted his weight, but didn't speak. 15 minutes. The clerk returned carrying a leather-bound ledger, dust coating its surface. He set it on the counter with obvious reluctance. Territorial water surveys, 1863 to 1867. That's what we have. Elena pulled the book toward her, opened it carefully. The pages were yellowed, brittle at the edges, covered in faded copperplate handwriting. Legal descriptions, boundary markers, water rights allocations by section and quarter section. She ran her finger down the columns, scanning. Section 14, Section 15, Section 22. There, Section 23, Township 4 North, Range 8 West, water rights allocated to original homesteader. March 1865, 17 years before Silas Garrett had ever set foot in the valley. Her heart beat faster, but she kept her face neutral. She turned the page. More entries. More dates. The Hendricks land water rights from 1866. The Brennan property, 1864, one of the earliest in the territory. And then, near the bottom of the page, a note in different handwriting. More recent ink, darker against the aged paper. Rights transferred to S. Garrett, 1879. See County Record, 847. Elena stared at the entry. Transferred. Not purchased. Not inherited. Transferred. I need to see County Record 847. The clerk's face went pale. That file is... it's restricted. Restricted by whom? I'm not at liberty to say. Elena straightened. Mr. Pritchard. Mr. Pritchard. These are public records. I have a legal right to examine them. Pritchard's hands were trembling slightly. He glanced again toward the window, then leaned forward, lowering his voice. Ma'am, I don't want trouble. I've got a family, a position here. You understand? I understand that someone's afraid of what's in that file. Pritchard swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed in his thin throat. I can't help you. He reached for the ledger. I'm sorry. Elena didn't release it. Their hands were both on the book now, a silent tug of war across the counter. What if I told you I'm not the only one looking? She kept her voice low. Steady. What if I told you 15 families are depending on what's in these records? 15 families with children, with farms, with lives that Silas Garrett is trying to destroy. Pritchard's eyes darted to Caleb, then back to her. What if I told you, Elena continued, that when this goes to territorial court, and it will, the judge is going to ask why certain records were kept from public view, and whose name is going to be on that question. Mr. Pritchard. The clerk's face had gone from pale to gray. A long moment passed. Then Pritchard released the ledger. His hands dropped to his sides. Storage room, third shelf on the left, box marked 1,879 transfers. His voice was barely a whisper. You didn't hear it from me. Hear what? He almost smiled. Almost. Elena found the box exactly where he'd said. The storage room was cramped, airless, lit by a single window, thick with grime. She pulled the box down, set it on a dusty table, lifted the lid. Inside a stack of documents tied with twine. She untied them carefully, spreading them across the table. County Record 847. Her breath caught. The document was a transfer of water rights, 17 separate allocations, covering nearly every major water source in the valley. All transferred to Silas Garrett on the same date, August 14th, 1879. But that wasn't what made her hands tremble. At the bottom of each transfer was a signature line, and on each line, the same notation signed under duress. Original holder, deceased, deceased. Elena flipped through the pages. Name after name. Date after date. All dead. All transferred to Garrett within weeks of their deaths. This wasn't business. This wasn't even theft. This was something worse. She gathered the documents, folded them carefully, tucked them into her bag. When she emerged from the storage room, Pritchard was gone. The counter was empty. The front door stood open, letting in a rectangle of harsh sunlight. Caleb was waiting outside, already in the wagon. Find what you needed. Elena climbed up beside him, Her hands were steady, but inside, her mind was racing. More than I expected. Good news or bad? She thought about the names on those documents. The word deceased repeated over and over, the pattern that was too consistent to be coincidence. I don't know yet. She looked at him. But I know this Garrett's claims don't hold. Not legally. Not if these documents say what I think they say. Caleb studied her face. What do they say? Elena hesitated. Part of her wanted to wait. To be sure. To check and double-check before making accusations she couldn't take back. But Caleb deserved to know. He'd trusted her this far. They say he didn't buy those water rights. She kept her voice low. He took them. From people who died. A lot of people. Caleb's jaw tightened. His hands gripped the reins hard enough to whiten his knuckles. You're saying he killed them? I'm saying 17 water rights holders died in 1879, and every single one of their rights went to Silas Garrett. Elena met his eyes. I'm saying that's not an accident. The wagon lurched forward. Neither of them spoke. The sun was dropping toward the western hills when Caleb finally broke the silence. If you're right, if you can prove this, then we have more than a water dispute. Elena stared at the road ahead. We have evidence of something that could put Garrett in prison. And if he finds out you have it, the question hung in the air. Elena thought about Garrett's smile in the general store, the cold edge beneath the polish, the way Pritchard's hands had trembled. A man who had taken water rights from 17 dead people wouldn't hesitate to protect himself. She touched her bag, felt the documents inside. Then we'd better move fast. But even as she said it, she noticed something on the road behind them. A rider, still distant, but following, keeping pace. The rider never got closer, never fell behind. Elena watched over her shoulder as the wagon rattled toward home, her fingers tight around the edge of the seat. The figure stayed at the same distance a quarter-mile back, maybe less, just visible against the fading light. He's still there, she said. I know. Caleb's voice was flat. His eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead. Been there since we left town. One of Garrett's men, most likely. They didn't speak again until the ranch came into view. The rider stopped at the property line, sat motionless on his horse for a long moment, then turned and rode back the way he'd come. A message, clear as words. We're watching. 3 days passed. Elena moved through them in a haze of tension, jumping at sounds, checking the road a dozen times a day. The documents stayed hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the bedroom she'd pried it up herself. Wrapped the papers in oilcloth, pressed them into the dark space beneath. Caleb worked the ranch, fed the horses, checked the empty creek bed. Said little, but she noticed things. The way he positioned himself between her and the door when they sat at the table. The way he started carrying his father's rifle when he went out to the pastures. The way he came back earlier each evening, as if being away too long made him uneasy. On the 4th morning, Martha Perkins appeared on the porch. Elena was kneading bread dough when she heard the footsteps. She wiped her hands on her apron, opened the door. Martha's face told her everything. What happened? Garrett's blocked the road. Martha's voice was hoarse. His men. They've set up at Miller's Crossing. Won't let anyone through to town. Elena's stomach dropped. Since when? Yesterday afternoon. Jacob Hendricks tried to get through this morning. Needed supplies. Medicine for Sarah, she's been poorly. Martha's jaw tightened. They turned him back. Said the road was closed for repairs. That's not legal. Legal. Martha spat the word. Garrett owns the sheriff, owns half the county board. What's legal got to do with anything? Elena gripped the doorframe. The bread dough sat forgotten on the counter, slowly deflating. How bad is it for Sarah? Bad enough. Martha's eyes were hard, but beneath the hardness, fear, real fear. She's got a fever. Baby could come any time now. If something goes wrong... She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Elena looked past her, toward the road. Empty. Quiet. A prison made of dust and distance. I'll talk to Caleb. She found him in the garden, or what was left of it. The tomato plants had given up completely, their leaves brown and curled, stems drooping toward the cracked earth. Caleb was crouched beside them, pulling dead vines from the soil, piling them in a heap for burning. He didn't look up when she approached. Martha was here, Elena said. Garrett's blocked the road. His hands stopped moving. I heard Sarah Hendricks needs medicine. She can't get to town. I heard that too. Elena watched him for a moment. His shoulders were rigid, his jaw set. But there was something else in the way he held himself. Something that looked like defeat trying to take root. Caleb, he stood abruptly, turned to face her. His eyes were red-rimmed. Dust coated his face, mixed with sweat, streaking down his cheeks like dirty tears. Maybe they're right. His voice came out raw, cracked. Maybe I should just sell. End this before someone gets hurt. Elena felt the words like a blow. You don't mean that, don't I? He pulled a dying tomato plant from the soil, roots trailing dirt like dried blood. Look at this. Look at it. He threw the plant down. I can't even grow food anymore. Can't water my cattle. Can't protect my neighbors. He kicked the pile of dead vines, scattering them across the garden path. Garrett's got money, got men, got the law in his pocket. His voice was rising now, edged with something that might have been anger or despair. What have I got? A dried-up ranch and a wife who didn't even want to be here. Elena flinched. Caleb saw it. His face twisted. Loss of composure flooding in behind the anger, and he turned away, one hand pressing against his forehead. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. Elena's voice was quiet, steady, but her hands were trembling at her sides. You meant exactly what you said. Silence. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of dust and dead vegetation. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called. Caleb's shoulders began to shake. At first, Elena thought he was laughing. Then she realized he wasn't. His whole body was trembling, breath coming in short, ragged gasps. He dropped to his knees in the dirt, head bowed, and stayed there. Elena stood frozen. She'd never seen a man break before. Not like this. Not her father, not her brother, not any of the farmers or lawyers or businessmen who'd passed through her life. Men didn't break. They got angry, they got cold, they walked away. They didn't kneel in the dirt of a dying garden and shake like something inside them had finally snapped. She took a step forward, then another. She knelt beside him. The soil was hard beneath her knees, baked dry by weeks of relentless sun. She could feel the heat of it through her skirt, pressing against her skin. Caleb. He didn't answer. She reached out, touched his shoulder, felt the muscles locked tight beneath his shirt, the tremors running through him. "Your father built this place." Her voice was soft. "You kept it standing. Alone. For years." His head lifted slightly. Dirt clung to his face where moisture had mixed with dust. "And now there are people counting on us." She moved her hand to his, took it in both of hers. His fingers were rough, calloused, cold despite the heat. "Not just you. Us." He looked at her. His eyes were raw, bloodshot, stripped of every wall he'd built. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "I don't know how to fight a man like Garrett. Neither do I." Elena squeezed his hand. "But I know we can't give up. Not yet. Not while there's still something worth fighting for." A long silence. The crow called again. Closer now. Then Caleb's fingers tightened around hers. His breathing steadied. The trembling slowed. "The meeting," he said. "The one you talked about, with the other families. Yes. Can you still do it? If we can get word to them." Elena felt something shift in her chest, hope. Fragile, but real. "If we can find a way around Garrett's men." Caleb wiped his face with the back of his hand, leaving fresh streaks of mud across his cheeks. He looked at her, really looked, and something passed between them that didn't need words. "Tomorrow," he said. "The church, 10 o'clock. You're sure?" "No." He stood, pulled her up with him. His hand stayed wrapped around hers. "But I'm done hiding. I'm done letting him win without a fight." Elena nodded. Her throat was too tight for words. They walked back to the house together, hand in hand. As the sun dropped below the horizon and darkness crept across the valley. That night, Elena lay awake in the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. The documents were beneath the floorboard, 3 feet from her head. 17 names, 17 deaths. Evidence that could destroy Silas Garrett. If she could get it to the right people. If Garrett didn't find it first. She closed her eyes, tried to sleep, but her mind kept circling back to the same question. How had Garrett known they'd gone to the county clerk's office? Someone had told him. Someone in town. Someone who'd seen them, watched them, reported back. Which meant someone close to them, maybe someone they trusted, was working for the enemy. And they had no idea who. The church smelled of old wood and candle wax. Elena stood at the front, her back to the whitewashed wall, facing 15 families crowded into pews that creaked with every movement. Morning light slanted through the narrow windows, catching dust motes suspended in the still air. Her hands were trembling. She pressed them flat against her skirt to hide it. Caleb stood near the door, arms crossed, watching. His presence steadied her, a solid weight at the edge of her vision. "Thank you for coming." Her voice sounded thin in the large space. She cleared her throat, tried again. "I know it wasn't easy. I know some of you had to go around Garrett's roadblock to get here." Murmurs rippled through the room. Jacob Hendricks sat in the front row, Sarah beside him with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders despite the heat. Martha Perkins was near the back, her face unreadable. Tom Brennan, 73 years old, bent nearly double by decades of hard work, occupied the end of a pew by himself. "I asked you here because I found something." Elena reached into her bag, pulled out the oilcloth-wrapped documents. "Something that changes everything." She unwrapped them slowly, let the papers unfold on the small table beside her. "These are water rights records from the territorial surveys of 1865. And these, she held up the second stack, are transfer documents from 1879. Silence. Every major water source in this valley was allocated to original homesteaders between 1863 and 1867. Legal allocations, recorded and filed with the territorial government. She paused. Silas Garrett didn't arrive in this territory until 1875. More murmurs. Louder now. His claims to your water don't hold. Not under territorial law. These documents prove that the original rights predate anything he's filed. A man in the middle row, Elena didn't know his name, stood up. His face was weathered, skeptical. That's all well and good, ma'am, but Garrett's got lawyers. He's got the county board. What good are old papers against that? These aren't just old papers. Elena held up the transfer documents. Look at what's written here. Signed under duress, original holder deceased, 17 times, 17 different families. The room went quiet. Garrett didn't buy those water rights. He took them from people who died. She let the words hang in the air. All in 1879. All transferred to him within weeks of their deaths. Tom Brennan's head came up slowly, his eyes rheumy, faded, fixed on her face. My brother died in 79, he said. His voice was rough, unused. They said it was an accident. Horse threw him. Elena felt her chest tighten. What was his name? William Brennan. Tom's hands gripped the pew in front of him. He had 40 acres along the creek. Good water. Always good water. Elena flipped through the documents. Found the name. Held it up. William Brennan, water rights transferred to Silas Garrett. September 3rd, 1879. She looked at Tom. I'm sorry. The old man's face crumpled. Just for a moment, then it hardened into something else, something cold and sharp. That dog won't hunt, he said quietly. Not anymore. The room erupted. Voices overlapped questions, accusations, demands. Elena let it wash over her, waited for the noise to subside. A man in the back stood up, younger than the others, wearing a hat pulled low over his eyes. Elena didn't recognize him. This is foolishness. His voice cut through the noise. You think a territorial court is going to side with a bunch of dirt farmers against Silas Garrett. You think any judge in this territory is going to look at those papers and not find a way to throw them out. The room went quiet again. The man's words hung in the air like smoke. Who are you? Elena asked. Name's Corbett. I work a claim south of here. Martha Perkins turned in her pew. Never seen you before. I keep to myself. Corbett shrugged. But I know how things work. Garrett's got reach, money, friends in high places. You go up against him, you lose. Simple as that. Elena studied his face. Something about his eyes, the way they moved, never quite settling, made her skin prickle. Then why are you here, Mr. Corbett? Curiosity. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Wanted to see what all the fuss was about. And now you've seen it. Now I have. He tipped his hat. Good luck, folks. You're going to need it. He walked toward the door. Caleb shifted, blocking his path. Let him go, Elena said. Caleb hesitated, then stepped aside. Corbett passed through the door without looking back. His footsteps faded down the church steps. Elena turned back to the room. Anyone else want to leave? No one moved? Good. She spread the documents across the table. Because here's what we're going to do. Tom Brennan was the first to sign. He walked to the front of the church slowly, his joints creaking with every step. Elena handed him the pen. He took it in fingers gnarled by 70 years of work. "I knew your father, Caleb." His voice carried through the room. "Stubborn as a mule, and twice as useful." A few people laughed quietly. "He'd be proud of the woman you found." Tom turned to face the room. "I've lived in this valley longer than most of you been alive. Watched it dry up, flood out, freeze over, still here, still standing." He looked at Elena. "This woman's got sand, and the law on her side, which is more than Garrett can claim." He bent over the table. The pen scratched against paper. "I'm too old to start running now." He straightened, nodded once, and walked back to his pew. Silence. Then Jacob Hendricks stood, walked to the front, signed. Sarah followed, her hand trembling but steady enough to write her name. Martha Perkins. The skeptical man from the middle row. Others Elena didn't know by name, weathered faces, calloused hands. People who had everything to lose and nothing left to give except their signatures. One by one, they came forward. 15 names, 15 families. The petition filled. Outside, the sun was high and brutal. Elena stepped onto the church steps. The signed petition clutched in her hands. The families were dispersing, heading to wagons and horses, talking in low voices. Then she saw him. Silas Garrett stood beside a black carriage, arms folded, watching. He approached slowly, his boots raising small puffs of dust with each step. Elena felt Caleb move up beside her, felt the tension radiating from his body. "Mrs. Dawson," Garrett's voice was pleasant, conversational. "Quite a gathering. Mr. Garrett, I understand you've been busy." His eyes moved to the papers in her hands. "Making plans, building alliances, exercising our legal rights." "Ah," he smiled. "Too many teeth." "Legal rights. Interesting choice of words." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the fine weave of his suit, the gold glint of his watch chain. "I'm going to give you one more chance," he said softly. "One chance to walk away from this. Take your husband, take whatever you can carry, and leave this valley. I'll even pay for your passage." Elena felt the weight of 15 signatures in her hands, the names of people who had trusted her, believed her. "No." Garrett's smile faded. "You're making a mistake." "I don't think so." She pulled the transfer documents from her bag, not all of them, just enough. Held them up for him to see. "These water rights predate your claims by 17 years. Every lawyer in the territory will tell you the same thing." Garrett's face went still. His eyes moved over the papers, reading, calculating. "Where did you get those county records, public files?" Elena met his gaze without flinching. "Available to anyone who asks." Behind her, the families had stopped moving, watching, waiting. Garrett looked at them, looked at Caleb, looked at Elena. Something shifted in his expression. The mask slipped, just for a moment, and underneath was something cold, calculating. Then the mask was back. The smile returned thinner now, less certain. "This isn't over. For you it is." He stared at her for a long moment, then turned, walked back to his carriage. Climbed in, the driver snapped the reins. The carriage rolled away. Dust settled in its wake. Elena stood on the church steps, watching until it disappeared over the ridge. Caleb's hand found hers, squeezed. "You did it," he said quietly. "We did it." But even as she said the words, something nagged at her. The man in the church, Corbett, the one who'd tried to discourage them, then left before the signing. She'd seen him before. She was certain of it now. At the county clerk's office, standing outside the land office, talking to two men. The day she and Caleb had gone for the documents. He'd been watching them then, and he'd been watching them today, which meant Garrett knew everything. The documents, the petition, the plan, and Corbett was still out there. The question wasn't whether Garrett would try something else. The question was when. 3 weeks later, the creek ran again. Elena stood at the edge of the garden, watching water trickle through the irrigation channel Caleb had dug, the sound of it soft, steady. Alive was the most beautiful thing she'd heard in months. The territorial court had ruled in their favor. 15 families, 17 water rights restored, Silas Garrett's claims thrown out, his transfers declared invalid. An investigation opened into the deaths of 1879. Corbett had disappeared the day after the church meeting. No one knew where he'd gone. No one much cared. The sun was warm on Elena's face, but not brutal, not punishing. August had gentled into something bearable, and the first green shoots were pushing through the soil where she'd planted new seeds. Footsteps behind her. She didn't turn around. Caleb stopped beside her, close enough that his shoulder nearly touched hers. He was carrying something awkward, wrapped in burlap. "What's that? Something I've been working on." He set it down, pulled the burlap away. A rocking chair. Oak, hand-built, the wood sanded smooth, simple, beautiful. Elena stared at it. "Porch looked uneven," Caleb said. His voice was gruff, the way it always got when he was embarrassed. Just one chair sitting there. Didn't seem right anymore. She ran her hand along the armrest, felt the hours of work in every curve, every joint, the care. "When did you, nights, couldn't sleep anyway?" She looked at him. He was looking at the chair, not at her. His jaw tight. "Caleb." He finally met her eyes. "Thank you." Something shifted in his face. Not quite a smile, but close. "Figured you might stay a while." That evening, he showed her the photograph. They sat at the kitchen table, the last light of day slanting through the window, and he pulled it from the drawer where she'd first seen it face down weeks ago. A man and a woman. Formal poses, stiff clothing, the way people stood for photographs in another era, but the woman's hand rested on the man's arm. And even in the faded sepia tones, Elena could see something in the way they leaned toward each other. "My parents," Caleb said. "Wedding day, 1845. Elena studied their faces. The man had Caleb's jaw, the same set to his shoulders. The woman's eyes were kind, even frozen in stillness. "Married 42 years. Caleb's voice was quiet. She called him mule-headed. He called her his compass. He set the photograph on the table between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. "I didn't understand what he meant." Caleb traced the edge of the frame with one finger. "Not till now." Elena's throat tightened. He picked up the photograph, walked to the mantel above the cold fireplace, and set it upright. First time it had stood there in years. Maybe. The dust showed where it had been missing. He turned back to her. Stay. One word. Simple. Everything. I'm already staying. I mean, he stopped, started again. I mean, stay. Not because of papers, not because you've got nowhere else. Stay because... He ran out of words. His hands opened and closed at his sides. Elena stood, crossed the room, stopped in front of him. Because what? His eyes searched her face. She could see him struggling, fighting against years of silence, years of walls. Because I want you to. She reached up, touched his face, felt the roughness of stubble, the warmth of skin. Then I'll stay. The porch held 2 chairs now. They sat side by side as the stars emerged. The sound of crickets filling the evening air. The smell of cooling earth drifted up from the garden, mixed with the faint sweetness of chamomile Elena had planted near the steps. 2 cups of tea sat on the railing, steam rising into the darkness. Elena leaned her head back against the chair. The wood was smooth, solid, made for her. Caleb reached across the space between them. His hand found hers. Rough fingers, calloused palms, warm. My brother wrote that I was your punishment. The words came out before she could stop them. She hadn't meant to say it, not now, not in this stillness, but there it was. Caleb turned to look at her. The starlight caught his face, softened the hard lines. Your brother's a fool. His thumb traced slow circles on her palm. Plain fool? Elena laughed. The sound surprised her light. Real, unfamiliar, after so many months of holding everything tight. That's what I thought too. They sat in silence for a while. The crickets sang. A breeze stirred the grass beyond the porch rail. Elena, what you did, the documents, the meeting, all of it. He was looking at the stars now, but his hand stayed wrapped around hers. I couldn't have done that. Not alone? You weren't alone. No. He turned to her. I wasn't. She met his eyes. Saw something there she hadn't seen before. Not gratitude. Not relief. But something deeper. Something that had been growing in the spaces between words. In the silences they'd shared. In the wild flowers left on kitchen tables without explanation. Caleb, yeah, I'm glad I came here. He was quiet for a moment. Then his hand tightened around hers. I'm glad you stayed. The tea grew cold on the railing. Neither of them moved to drink it. The stars wheeled overhead, vast and endless, the same stars that had watched over this land for thousands of years, the same stars that would watch over it for thousands more. Elena closed her eyes. The rocking chair creaked gently beneath her, beside her. Caleb's breathing was steady, even, peaceful. She thought about the letter she'd burned, the family that had cast her out, the word they'd used, punishment. They'd been wrong. She wasn't punishment. She wasn't a problem to be disposed of. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. The crickets sang. The night stretched out before them, warm and quiet and full of promise. And the 2 rocking chairs moved together, side by side, in the rhythm of something just beginning. If you're still here, sitting with this story, I want you to know something. That quiet feeling in your chest right now, the one that's hard to name, you don't have to explain it. You don't have to understand it. It's yours. And that's enough. Many of us have carried something like Elena carried. A letter we burned. A word someone said that stayed too long. A door that closed behind us before we were ready. Some of us have been Caleb too, standing on porches alone, not knowing how to reach across the silence. And perhaps you've wondered, the way they wondered, if the life you're living is the one you were meant for, if the detours were mistakes, or if they were leading somewhere all along. It's all right not to have the answer. Some things don't need to be resolved. They just need to be held. Gently. The way you'd hold a cup of tea that's finally cooled enough to drink. This story can rest now. And so can you. Thank you for staying. Thank you for listening. That means more than you know.